Hello and welcome back to Talon 101. This time we're going to take a closer look at Hwoarang's jab. Not the jab in left foot forward, but the jab in right foot forward. Now, as you know, a regular jab is +8 on hit and +1 on block. Now, RFF2 does do the exact same thing with it being +8 on hit, but +2 on block. That makes it an extremely unique jab that very few characters in this game have. And Hwoarang has access to this +2 jab, making his RFF4 effectively 10 frames right after, his RFF-DF4 11 frames right after, and RFF-forward 3 being 12 frames right after into instant mix-ups. That's crazy. Now, quick tidbit before we go into all of the jab strings, right? Because there's RFF21, RFF23, RFF24. And of course, you can access all of it from RFF, but you can also access it from RFS. So if I press RFS21, RFS23, and RFS24. Now what changes? As you noticed from the bottom left screen, or bottom left of the screen, RFF21 goes 10-10. So from 10 frames to 10 frames, because the base or the starting move is RFF2. If we change this to right flamingo stance and do RFF21 or RFS21, you notice that goes from 13 to 10 because the base comes from RFS2. Again, still a really damn good jab. The same thing with LFS1. But that's an okay trade-off in order to get access to all of these jab strings in RFS. And you can go from RFS to RFF, vice versa. So if I start from, let's say, RFF, right? RFF24, I hold forward. Now I'm in RFS. And then I do RFS21. I go back to right foot forward. So it makes it really, really easy to continue pressure and reset back into RFS to really think about which one to do next while getting access to all these jab strings. And the frame data, again, is mostly the same minus the base part, which is RFF2 and RFS2. Let's start with RFF2. Base of all these jab strings. Again, it's a 10 frame high that is +8 on hit and +2 on block and keeps Hwoarang where he needs to be in right foot forward. And this is just objectively one of the best jabs in the game because +2 advantage? Not a lot of characters, very few characters have this. The only one I can think off the top of my head right now as I'm recording this is Ganryu. And Ganryu had a 13 frame high, very similar to Hwoarang's left flamingo stance and right flamingo stance. And there was +3 so that he could jab again, right? But yeah, +2 jab, that's 10 frames. Crazy. Now, why is that kind of crazy? Because his jab is, oh well, everyone's jabs for the most part is +1, right? And your options here are usually just to remain safe. So you do a DF1, you do another 1-2 into left flamingo or right flamingo, you do a 4-3, or you cancel that 4-3 into left flamingo stance, assuming your opponent has been conditioned or you're trying to test the waters on how they react. And of course, just generally do a low, whether that be down back 3 or down back 4 into right flamingo stance. Those options don't exactly continue pressure, right? They basically go back to neutral for the most part, or you already had to condition your opponent so that you get access to, pressure your opponent from a move that isn't exactly plus, because that's -6 transition into left flamingo stance. Now, RFF doesn't have that problem. All your options on block the moment you do it from RFF2. 12 frame high. Oh, well, not exactly a 12 frame high if you do it immediately after RFF2. 10 frame high at that point into +4 into right flamingo stance, and they have to think about RFS F4. 13 frame mid or 11 frame mid after RFF2 into, again, the same thing, RFS F4 mix up. And, well, 14 frame low into RFS. Of course, again, what you're going to notice is that RFF and RFS very interconnected with one another. And you still have some left flamingo goodness. So that's a 14 frame high into left flamingo stance and an instant mix up at +12. And of course, if you do that after RFF2, that's 12 frames. What's the opponent supposed to do here? Guess. For the most part, yeah. As you can see that, every little option I mentioned that you can do after RFF2 and that I have not mentioned even, it's just like, wow, Hwoarang has access to all that. Indeed, this is why we call RFF the bully stance, or Hwoarang's objectively best stance. Because if this was his default stance, he'd be a pretty damn crazy character if he wasn't already. That's all the stuff you can do on block. It's kind of crazy just thinking about it. Like, you can just mix up the opponent immediately, whether that be high, mid, or low right after a jab and having the frames to boot and being covered by it. But what if the opponent wants to step? And of course, this always remains Hwoarang's weakness. And if the opponent tries to step towards the left, RFF back 3, DF2. Of course, that's an asterisk, as you already know, if you're a Hwoarang player. And down back 4. This is your 3 consistent options because, of course, the jabs won't exactly count on it. Of course, again, we're using the cream of the crop here in terms of sidestepping. But yeah, generally speaking, if you want something, super consistent, so those 3 options for the most part, minus homing moves like backlash, up back 2, or up 2, and of course, RFF DF3. Now, of course, they still work against sidewalk left. RFF back 3 will still hit there, including down back 4 right after RFF 2. DF2 is the one where it starts losing against sidewalk left, and this doesn't have to be Lily for his DF2 to lose against sidewalk left. So, tie step left again continues to remain the bane of Hwoarang's existence anytime the opponent's trying to like avoid his stuff. So like even if all of that's there, the opponent's just like, I'm gonna step left. So you gotta keep that in mind when you use RFF 2. Now, let's talk about sidestep right. This is further buffed because DF1, DF3 plus 4, most especially if heat is active, that's gonna be an amazing tool to have. Forward 1 plus 2 does work, as you can see. RFF forward 3, down 3, 4, oops, right after, and down 4. Those are your best options, but DF1 and forward 1 plus 2 have an asterisk beside them because the moment side walking is involved or introduced at these frames, not because it's not plus 5, expect the opponent to go around your back when you throw one of these 2 quick mids. So that's why, again, if you do have heat active, you can really protect the right side. But of course, you can't protect that with the left with DF3 plus 4. Unfortunately, it's not a protect all, end all kind of thing. But RFF forward 3 will still catch. We were in sidewalk, right? Sidewalk right. They'll still catch sidewalk right. And so would your lows. Down 3, 4. And down 4. Now, of course, down back 4 does not catch over there. So you really have to think about whether you're throwing out down back 4, down 3, 4, or down 4. And so there's no mids intersecting with one another, nor are there lows. So you really gotta decide whether you want to go catch the right side or do you want to catch the left side. And of course, just bet it all on the homing move and pray that they don't duck and launch the backlash, right? Or consistently punish it. So that's generally RFF2's situation. At the end of the day, it's really good, even if it has some of these problems or counterplay, right? Now let's move on to the first jab string, which is RFF21. This is a 10-frame combination that is plus 6 on hit and 0 on block. It leaves Hwoarang in right foot forward. There isn't really much to say about this jab string, except the fact that it's pretty damn good when you're against a power crush. So we're gonna go back to using the jab strings in right flamingo stance. So if I do something like RFF4 forward into RFS21, I'm safe. And this is going to be connected to a lot of right flamingo situations because this is the jab string that will keep you safe against power crushes. And besides that, so it makes it an extremely low risk, low reward kind of thing. But it's just generally a handy tool. And of course, you know, it's still plus 6. So at that point, you can still shut down a Rage Art with a 13-frame mid. And you have 3 of them. 3 13-frame mids now, rather than only 2. And it still has a third hit in RFF211. That's all natural, by the way. As you can see here, standing, block all. So if I hit RFF211, it all goes in. Now, what's RFF211? It's plus 3 on hit and plus 8 on block. So you're still safe. And you go back to left foot forward this time instead of staying in right foot forward. So you only generally use RFF211 when you want to cash out on damage because it's 28 damage plus 3. And that plus 3, of course, again, when you introduce the backdash. Yeah. So that's why you're generally cashing out when you use it. And if you're at the wall, That +3, there's no backdashing there. Of course, they can still sidestep either way, but again, at least again, you remove one defensive option. You're in left foot forward. And if you have heat active, all the more. So RFF 2.1 and RFF 2.11, generally a safe thing to do, whether you're doing it from RFS or doing it from RFF, because again, the opponent still has to think about the last hit. And that can be delayed-ish. Delayed-ish, mind you. So you notice how it takes a little bit. There's like a slow delay there rather than just like mashing it the whole way. I hope you see it on screen. If not, you can slow it down, go frame by frame, and compare those two instances. But yes, now RFF 2.11, you can get access to the last two hits by doing RFF 1.1. That's also natural. It also suffers from the same problem because again, it's the last two hits. So if I try to mid-check with DF1, that's not going to happen. But if you do want access to it, you can use it. And it's also still 10 frames flat. It's exactly the same frames, -8 and +3 on hit, and you go back to left foot forward. So you can make your choice whether to stay in right foot forward or cash out into LFF or just go for the damage in 22 damage, which is slightly higher than his regular 1-2. So the stronger 1-2 in that sense. Because that's 15, 22, 16, 1 point higher. Now, let's move forward with the next jab string, which replaced 2 back 4. Now, I need to mention 2 back 4 because this was his go-to wall splatting move and move that gained this exact situation in open space. So before, you could do RFF2 and connect it to his RFF back 4. That could be confirmed-ish, if I remember it right. And the fact that there was also RFF2 into RFF back 3. So you still got access to a counter hit launcher if the second hit of RFF back 3 only hit. So if you, let's say, did RFF2 on block and then the opponent pressed right after and got hit by RFF back 3, that was amazing. The same thing applied if they got hit by the second hit of RFF2 back 4. Because, you know, that was boosted into a counter hit launcher, buffed into a counter hit launcher later in Season 3 or Season 4 of Tekken 7. And having those 2 jab strings allowed for some really silly things like doing RFF2 going backwards, right? Because your opponent typically thinks you're going to pressure them, right? And they're thinking about the RFS mix-up. And so if you go backwards right away, you're like, oh, I can go after him. So what you're going to do is go back, and then you're going to press something like that. Now, you can still do this with RFS or RFF 2.3, but I'm just saying is that the reward significantly decreased because they were both counter hit launchers. That's just what we lost, or what Hwoarang lost, right? Fair exchange, because again, RFF 2.3 is still connected to 10 frames. This is plus 20G on hit and is -8 on block. Now, this string can be ducked immediately. If I throw out RFF 2.3, that does not jail. But generally speaking, its situation on hit is pretty good, just like the old RFF2 back 4. Yeah, old RFF2 back 4. You can basically follow up with a running 3 if you want to go into left foot forward, or follow up with FF3 if you want right foot forward pressure. And this is more preferred if you're at the wall, because obviously in open space, your opponent can move. And since it is plus 20, you remember heat engagers were plus 17. That means you can stand switch into RFF back 2. That also means, if you get this, stand switch into RFF DF4. But of course, you do need to dash in a little bit. That requires more execution on your part, but it is possible. So that's 4 mid options. And of course, you connect those 4 mid options with lows. Down back 4. And since you're plus 20, I think that's unparryable for the most part. Let's confirm. We'll reset this again just to be sure. Down back 4, no low parry. Down 3-4. No low parry. One last. RFF down 3-4. But overall, you have left foot forward pressure and right foot forward pressure right off the bat. Now let's move on to the next one, which has been Hwoarang's saving grace a lot. And you usually see it in a lot of Hwoarang pressure. That's RFF 2.4. Now, of course, not this exact string, but it's the string where you get to do and go into right flamingo stance. We'll go to that afterwards. So again, 10 frames. Because it starts from RFF 2. It's plus 3 on hit, and it's -8 on block. Keeps him in right foot forward. And the big thing here is that you can enter right flamingo stance at plus 16 on hit and plus 4 on block. And of course, you go to RFS. At this point, on hit, you can easily lock them with a flying eagle. And of course, on block, it's all about that RFS F4. What's very interesting about this is that on counter hit, the second hit of RFF 24 or RFS 24 gets a guaranteed RFS 23 or a guaranteed RFS F4. So RFS F4, that's going to go into big damage. So of course, that counter hit, if you notice it here, that says plus 16. So question is he allowed an RFS 4? No, he's not. So even if it does say plus 16 in the frame data, that's actually plus 13 only into guaranteed follow-ups. Now, the Flamingo mix is extremely handy because you get to see, again, so I mentioned at the start of the video, wherein you can loop back into right foot forward and go back to right flamingo stance and really make your opponent's life kind of hell in this spot because all the pressure tools are really available in right foot forward and the damaging ones are available in right flamingo stance, meaning the hell sweep, heat dash, and of course natural hitting RFS F44. But entering flamingo isn't the only thing RFF 24 has going for it. It has two follow-ups. RFF 244, which is basically RFF 44 with a jab string, and RFF 243, which is again just RFF 43 with a jab string. So RFF 244 will create a lot of space on block. And of course, if the last hit hits, that's a knockdown into a guaranteed back 3 or FF3. And of course, you return back to left foot forward right after this at -5. Now, RFF 243 is the exact same thing. That is a knockdown into a guaranteed FF3. And this is -14 on block. Now, this move, while it keeps you in right foot forward, becomes safer the farther you throw it out. Because that is a long kick. So -10, -11. So if you want to space out your opponent and just do RFF 43 or RFF 243, be my guest and mixing it with RFF 244. But if you've noticed from what I've been doing here, you can delay the last hit. RFF 24, RFF 244, RFF 24, RFF 243. So it takes really, really long. So the fact that the opponent has to deal with RFF 21, RFF 2 by itself, an RFF 24 that can enter Flamingo, and if they're not thinking about it, they're gonna get hit by the third hit of RFF 44 and the third hit of RFF 243, which is again a nightmare. You know, again, and get connected back into RFS, RFF, and like you can just let it hang. And then even if you can't really do anything with this +3, because again it's so far, because again just enable backdash 2-3. Yeah, not hitting. And then even then, most especially if you didn't have heat, you're just gonna get punished. It's not worth it. But now, that +3, it's mental. Because they were thinking about either Flamingo, 244, or 243. So something they can probably punish, something they could potentially duck, and then something where they have to do a sidestep right into a duck or sidestep right to avoid most options. But yeah, that's where his right jab comes into big play for a lot of his pressure and makes him look less like a taekwondo master and more like a boxing extraordinaire, because he heavily relies on the fact that his jabs are amazing, and RFF2 continues to support that trend. So that's everything I know about RFF2 and its jab strings that are connected to it. Again, I've been Frontier, and thank you for watching.